In the headlines, DRC expressed support for resuming good trilateral negotiations under the African Union headquarters. And Ethiopians reject UNHCR's position about whereabouts of TPLF refugees in Sudan. Hello and welcome to Addis News Hour. I'm Daniel Kasahun with the news. وانا درساني نشاقر والك في تنيا يالي لميهم زمانش لميهم قانش توبنا تاقاري وانا درساشي አዲስ ነው እለቱ ሲነጋ ለሊቱ ሰላም ነው ፍቅር ያውዳመት ነገር ወንድሜ እህቴ Ambassador and permanent representative of Ethiopia to the United Nations, Taye Asqaselase, said UN Security Council's referral of the GERD to the trilateral negotiation and the African Union-led process is appropriate. Ambassador Taye noted the decision shows the position of the Council of the consideration of the issue as a water right and water development issues. Ambassador Taye underlined, Ethiopia underlines that the most important issue the two sisterly riparian countries shall be ready to deal with is a rule-based order on the Nile Basin. He says, whereby each of the 11 riparian countries will utilize their share from the resource. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister Demeke Mekonnen held talks with his counterpart, Christophe Lantdula-Alap of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Briefing journalists, spokesperson of the ministry, Dina Mufti, said the discussion was on how to resume the trilateral negotiations on the Grand Renaissance Dam under the auspices of the African Union. Kasaunchani reports.
The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister Demeke Mekonnen held talks with his counterpart, Christophe Lantdula-Alap, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Democratic Republic of Congo. He assured the Minister Ethiopia's readiness to participate in the negotiations at any time, mentioning Ethiopia's strong desire for equitable and reasonable water use on the Nile Basin to be a source of cooperation rather than a source of conflict. During the occasion, spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia, Dina Mufti, has put a result to the discussions that the two leaders discussed how to resume the trilateral negotiations on the ground Ethiopian Renaissance Dam.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Mr. Demeke Mekonnen, held discussions with his counterparts of the DRC. They held discussion on how to resume the trilateral negotiations on the GERD. The Deputy Prime Minister reiterated Ethiopia's position, Ethiopia's commitment to faithfully negotiate at trilateral level. Ethiopia's commitment also to the fact that this negotiation will be undertaken under the auspices of the African Union. He outlined also Ethiopia's commitment, dedication toward this reasonable and rational, equitable utilization of the Nile resource. He emphasized also the need for using this Nile as a source of integration, not a source of conflict.
According to Dina, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Christophe Lantdula-Alap, appreciated this faithful negotiation. He also said that the Democratic Republic of Congo strongly believes in the African solution to Africa's problems, noting the Renaissance Dam negotiations should be guided by this principle. He also mentioned the possibility of starting the tripartite negotiations in the shortest time. Christophe Lantdula Ndula Pala has expressed a congratulatory message to the government of Ethiopia for conducting a successful national election.
The guest also expressed the congratulatory message of the President of DRC, His Excellency Seshede, that Ethiopia has conducted successful elections. He has congratulated the Ethiopian side for that. He also appreciated the commitment of Ethiopia towards these faithful negotiations on the GERD.
It was also noted that both sides discussed bilateral relations on ways of boosting Ethiopian Democratic Republic of Congo to achieve mutual interests along with several topics of mutual concern, Dina stated.
Ethiopians reject the UNHCR's position about whereabouts of TPLF refugees in the Sudan. Ethiopians don't seem to believe that the UNHCR was not aware of registered Ethiopian refugees in Sudan taking part in the war in Ethiopia and taking military training in Sudan. The United Nations Refugee Agency UNHCR recently issued a statement regarding Ethiopian refugees involved in the fighting in the northern part of Ethiopia. The reaction came after the TPLF fighters who were captured in the battlefront in northern Ethiopia were found with United Nations refugee identification card.
The statement from the UN body did not openly admit that Ethiopian asylum seekers who arrived in Sudan in the wake of the war in Tigray, who were recognized as refugees under the UNHCR protection, are engaged in fighting in northern Ethiopia. The expression in the statement was rather subtle. It said while there has been a modest decrease in the number of Ethiopian refugees in the refugee camps in recent months, UNHCR is not able to verify the whereabouts of those who have left, including those who may have returned to their country of origin. Ethiopians, however, rejected the explanation. Particularly unacceptable for most Ethiopian is the claim on the part of the refugee agency that it does not know the whereabouts of those Ethiopian registered refugees in Sudan who are said to be missing from the designated refugee camps. Ethiopian activists tend to believe that the UNHCR knows where the missing refugees are and what they have been doing. There have been reports by Ethiopian activists and local media that Sudan has recently been engaged in training and arming TPLF forces. They initially arrived in Sudan as refugees. They're believed to have been involved in the Maikadra massacre in November 2020, as reported by Ethiopian authorities. The TPLF itself has confirmed that it has over 30,000 fighters in Sudan. Those who managed to enter Ethiopia from an unknown location in Sudan adjacent to the Ethiopian border in the northwest direction of the country have been involved in the fighting on the part of the TPLF forces. In May 2021, hundreds of TPLF forces who were in Sudan as refugees were captured by the Ethiopian Defense Force as they attempted to enter Ethiopia for armed activity. UNHCR's handling of the TPLF forces who fled to Sudan after committing the Maikadra massacre has raised questions among Ethiopians. Refugee status recognition was given at the time when the Ethiopian government disclosed that the Maikadra criminals have crossed the border to Sudan. Another striking thing about the TPLF criminals who were accepted as refugees in Sudan is that they were used primary sources for the narratives in major media outlets and human rights organizations in the West. Aid agencies who claim to have the urge to provide emergency humanitarian assistance in Tigray were also somehow involved in aiding the TPLF forces. Fighters who were captured in the recent fighting in the North Wollo and South Gondar areas were caught with high-energy biscuits that were meant to be distributed to those who need it most in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. The TPLF leaders in the Tigray region were also provided with satellite phones that were supposed to be for aid agency workers' operational use.
The Minister of Peace and Chairperson of Emergency Coordinating Committee, Mufarat Kamil, met with representatives of the United Nations and other international organizations involved in the coordination and delivery of humanitarian assistance in the northern part of the country. Briefing the representatives on latest developments in the country, Mufareh said the support being provided by the United Nations and other international humanitarian organizations in Amhara and Afar regions is currently extremely low and needs to be boosted. She added that it is imperative for the organizations to expand support to the two regions in accordance with the spirit of their establishment and the duties they are entrusted with. Like the Tigrayan region, our people in the Amhara and Afar regions are victims of injuries, displacements, and destroyed infrastructures, she said. The minister further urged the international humanitarian organizations to pay equal attention and put in as much effort to the humanitarian crisis in the Amhara and Afar regions as much as their efforts in the Tigray region.
አንዳንድ ጊዜያት እንዳውሎ ነፋስ ናቸው ሞገዳቸው ይበረታል አንዳንድ ጊዜያት ወጀብ አላቸው ማዕበላቸው ይገስፋል አንዳንድ ጊዜያት እሳት ናቸው ወላፈናቸው ያድላል አንዳንድ ጊዜያት የጦርነት ናቸው የጦፈ ፍልሚያ ውስጥ አንዳንድ ጊዜያት ይሁሉ አልፎ የጸጥታ ይሆናሉ ሰላም በምድሪቷ ላይ ይነክሳል ጊዜ ይለዋወጣል እኛ ግን ጸንተን እንቆማለን ሀገር ማለት እኛ ነን
You're watching live transmission of this news hour. The Ethiopian National Defense Force called upon Tigrayan youth and military members who are fighting alongside the TPLF to surrender and back to normal life. The statement issued yesterday noted that a large number of Tigrayan youth and military members are sacrificing their lives for nothing. According to the statement, TPLF is using these youth groups to fight against the national interest that disintegrates the country. Moreover, it blamed TPLF for banning the Tigrayan people from getting humanitarian aid unless their sons got to war front. Urging the youth to peacefully surrender to the National Army, the statement assured them forgiveness and protection in return. This is this news hour. United States military records state that Ethiopia was among the first countries to provide a complete unit of ground troops, Kanyo battalions, as part of the United Nations Command Force in Korea in 1968. It was the first time that Ethiopia had been involved in a war outside the African continent. Koreans never forget this Ethiopia's participation in the Korean War.
I never forget your spirit. You know, when we were difficult in Korean wars, you sent your army and your brother, your father, your grandfather put in here. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I never forget your activity. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Currently, Landmark Museum in memory of Ethiopian troops is in place in Korea. There are also bars, restaurants, and streets named after Ethiopia.
1968, Haile Selassie visited here after he asked our president, Mr. Bak, for the construction Ethiopian Cultural Center in here. But our president is very afraid of communists that times because of the 1968 North Korean the special armies attacked our Blue House. So Mr. Park was afraid of terror. In 1968, after that accident, Haile Selassie visited in Chuncheon, but Chuncheon is very close to North line.
It was also the first time Ethiopian women had left the country for military nursing duties along with soldiers following extensive training for a war and a land so foreign to them. Ethiopia and Kenya are undertaking activities to help realize economic integration of the two countries. Talking to ETV, chairman of Kenyan Small and Micro Enterprises, Jacob El-Shagudan, hopes the agreement will solve trade barriers and bolster investment opportunities in this region. Hatam Ashagri reports.
Ethiopia and Kenya are witnessing economic growth in the Horn region. The two countries are on the verge of realizing economic integration by cementing their business ties. Talking to ETV English, Customs Commission Deputy Commissioner Mulugeta Bayena said the two countries are undertaking exemplary economic integration in the Horn region.
The economic integration between both countries, not only as Horn of Africa and East Africa, including Central Africa, the role of this one-stop border functionality is very crucial. If we take in two dimensions, the issue of trade facilitation is one of the prominent issue in promoting investment and promoting tourism.
Construction of the Ethiopia-Kenya transmission interconnection line has been completed, and the facility is expected to be launched officially in June this year.
The countries agreed to work together to implement one-stop border export program to facilitate all important export products.
The one border post enhances the integration, especially as we do have a huge potential from Ethiopia side and Kenyan side. A huge potential for importation of homemade products from Ethiopian side, especially agricultural products are being exported to Ethiopia. If we facilitated this one, it will be very encouraging for small-scale industries here in Ethiopia, and also encouraging for small-scale industries who are going to process these agricultural products there in Kenya.
Mulugeta remarked the economic integration activities are expected to sustain the economic growth of the two countries.
Before the operationalization of this one-stop border post of Moyale, the two sides, Kenyan sides, all import goods were being examined. All passengers, including tourists and their vehicles, their cargoes, were subject for twice and above times searching and staying on both borders.
According to the Deputy Commissioner, the two countries' economic integration relies on African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Chairman of Kenyan Small Micro Enterprises, Jacob Elisha Godana, for his part hopes the agreement will solve the trade barrier and bolster investment opportunities in the Horn region.
This closure of border and there's no procedure, like let's say language barrier between the two countries. You know the mutual understanding we have for the countries for the last 60 years. So it has really affected especially the business community, there's SMEs. Not only the language barrier, there's this trade barrier, porous border, and there's a lot of closure of the border, which has really affected immensely the business community.
According to the chairman, the agreement is also vital to do business easier as well as to use huge market Ethiopian opportunities.
It is an advantage. It is ease of doing business. You see the population of Kenya is only 50 million, and the population of Ethiopia is 100 million. You see that market. Even if you get like 20,000 people coming from Ethiopia to Kenya, that is business. For me here, let's say to do business, I'm interested in Safaricom, which you have just started. The Equity Bank has started. You see the interaction. I also come from here. My mother comes from Yabello. You see, we have the cultural ties.
It is to be recalled that Ethiopia, Kenya and the South Sudan reiterated their commitment to advance the implementation of a mega infrastructure project in the East African region, also known as Lapset Corridor program last June.
Like the Ethiopian Kebero drum, I came in playing the Ghanaian dondo to represent the unity in Africa. We can never talk about unity without talking about Ethiopia. Welcome to Addis Ababa, the home of the African Union and the capital town of Ethiopia. Two great men, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and the Emperor Haile Selassie I, were very instrumental in the formation of the Organization of African Unity, now known as the African Union. These two understood that together we stand, divided we fall. May the souls of these great Pan-Africanists go marching on. Tonight, I am going to be taking you through a cultural, historic, and insightful tour through Ethiopia. When you come to Ethiopia, there are sites that you might want to visit, some of which include the Simien National Park, with its high peaks, deep valleys, and sharp precipices, stretching over 1,500 meters. You might also want to visit the ruins of Aksum, which represents the heart of ancient Ethiopia, when the kingdom of Aksum was the most powerful between the Eastern Roman Empire and Persia. You might also want to visit Tia, which is an archaeological site in the center of Ethiopia, south to Addis Ababa. Ethiopia prides itself in its diverse landscape and rich culture, which is why you might want to visit so many cities in Ethiopia, some of which include Addis Ababa, Mabel, Lalibela, Gondar, just to mention a few. Ethiopia, being the second most populated country in Africa, is the only country that has never been colonized by the West. The Italians tried to create a colonial crack on Africa through Ethiopia, but were defeated at the Battle of Adura. They hid on the hills looking down on the valleys of Adura with their guns, bows, and arrows and defeated the Italians. Did you know that Ethiopia is the only country with a 13 calendar system? What does this even mean? This means that when everybody else in the world has 12 months in the year, there are 13 months in Ethiopia. This is why I'm 7 years younger, because while all of you are in the year 2021, it is still 2014 in Ethiopia. Interesting, isn't it? In fact, yesterday, September 11th, was a new year in Ethiopia. Melkam Addis Ahmed.
Our final news takes us to Guinea. A meeting is being held there. The 4-day series of talks intending to pave a return to civilian rule in Guinea after a coup entered its second day with the parties involved seeking to reach a memorandum on the way forward. Co-leader Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbia told attendees the coup was the result of the failure of the entire political and military class, according to Sidia Touré, a former prime minister who was at the meeting. Opposition party leaders who came to the heavily guarded People's Palace for the meeting, however, publicly backed the coup and laid more criticism on ousted President Alpha Condé. Osmani Kabal, leader of the opposition party of Democrats for Hope, called that bid by Condé to stay in power beyond his mandate a coup as well. The junta, which has come under intense diplomatic pressure since seizing power on September 5th from President Alpha Condé, later held talks with religious leaders. It will then meet civil society figures, diplomats, trade unionists, and mining executives through to Friday. A reminder of the headlines. DRC expresses support for resuming GERD trilateral negotiations under AU auspices. Ethiopians reject UNHCR's position about whereabouts of TPLF refugees in Sudan. That's all for this edition. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and stay safe.